For most coaster enthusiasts, there is one word that sums up why we spend all our time and money obsessing over coasters: airtime. In this discussion, we're going to talk airtime, how it's produced, where you can find the best, and we'll even ask the important question: can there ever be too much airtime? Stay tuned to find out. So let's start with the basics. What is airtime? It's that feeling of either floating gently out of your seat all the way down a 200-foot drop, or else being violently thrown into the lap bar and held there as the train is snatched out from under you. Coaster designers produce airtime by manipulating two main factors: speed and shape. First up is speed. So while you don't necessarily have to be going super fast to get airtime, you're not going to get it sitting still in the station either. In general, although speed is better for producing airtime, RMC manages to produce some on the relatively slow ride from the station to the lift on some of their coasters, and that comes down to the shape of the track or the element that you're experiencing. In the old days, designers used circles and straight lines to produce their drop profiles. This sometimes resulted in extreme pops of air at the top of the hills, but not a sustained falling feeling as you traveled down the drop. Examples of this can be found on the coasters from NAD, John Miller, early PTCs, and even on Magnum XL200. These days, though, advances in computer-aided design allow designers to calculate forces precisely, and parabolic profiles are used in concert with speed to achieve perfect floater or ejector air for the duration of a drop. Look no further than Intamin, B&M, or RMC for examples of this. Where you get airtime on a ride can vary wildly too, depending on whether you ride in the front or back of the train. Front seat riders typically experience more and stronger air as they go over the tops of hills. Back seat riders, on the other hand, experience more and stronger air as they go down hills. This is the main reason I'm a backseat guy myself. But as parks and coaster designers push for more extreme, sustained ejector air on rides such as Skyrush, Steel Vengeance, and El Toro, you're pretty much going to experience airtime no matter where you sit.
Yay!
But wait, why is that a good thing? Does everyone love airtime? To be honest, the answer is no. Among the general public, or the GP as enthusiasts like to call them, some people love it and some people hate it. Whereas you'll find enthusiasts doing all sorts of gymnastics in the station trying to prevent park staff from pushing the lap bar down as tightly as possible, or stapling as we like to call it. You usually find the GP doing that on their own. Very few members of the public like to ride with loose lap bars. While this can be attributed to the GP often feeling like coasters are inherently unsafe, or that there's a danger of being launched from the train, it can also be because some folks just plain don't like the sensation of airtime. For example, I have several non-enthusiast friends who vastly prefer rides with more curves than straight drops simply because they don't like air. And you'll often hear members of the GP disembarking from a ride saying, "I couldn't stay in my seat," sometimes with delight, but sometimes with dread too. This is, of course, fathomless for most enthusiasts. Like I already said, we go through a lot for good air, and that includes spending tons of money, time, chatting on the internet, hyping new rides up, on and on and on. But why? What's so good about airtime? So now it just gets personal. I've been riding coasters for a long time, and after you've ridden a few hundred, the thrill of just going up and down sort of disappears. From a technical angle, I can say the very best coasters give you something more than that, and it's a sensation you really can't find anywhere else aside from maybe skydiving, being on an airplane, or bull riding. It's either a feeling of sustained weightlessness as you plummet down a B&M hyperdrop from 200 feet in the air, or else it's the almost violent, repeated ejector air you experience on the very best Intamin and RMC designs. In other words, it's almost impossible to experience these sensations in normal life, and nearly every other situation you might experience them in is usually much more dangerous. There aren't many places where you can feel like you're flying without actually falling through the air. So that's the technical angle, and what you usually read or hear in articles and shows is something along those lines. But I think it really boils down to something simple. We like airtime because it's fun, and who really needs to analyze that? So with that out of the way, what are some of the best airtime producing rides? In my experience, the best singular airtime moments I've ever experienced overall have come on 5 coasters. First up is Skyrush with its incredible first drop and outrageous -2 G-hop. Next up is Steel Vengeance. It mixes both sustained ejector air in the beginning with short ejector pops throughout the end, and it just ends up being an unmistakable legend. Lightning Rod's quadruple down that gets more and more intense as it goes along has to be mentioned. And of course El Toro's 1-2-3 punch at the beginning, followed by a brief cooldown before the mother of all mid-course drops, is top tier. And finally, a personal favorite for me is Diamondback with its delicious hill after hill of perfect sustained floater air. Now we come to the important question I promised to answer at the beginning of the video. Can there ever be too much airtime? Surprisingly, the answer for me at least is yes. There are a few coasters I've ridden where repeated ejector air got to be a little bit painful. This is generally more a function of the restraints though. Having something digging into your thighs repeatedly isn't always pleasant, and a perfect example of this for me was Superman at Six Flags New England. Although I really liked the ride, I found it downright painful, especially towards the end. I know Skyrush also received some hate from enthusiasts due to its restraints, but I've personally never had a problem with them. So that just about wraps it up. Now that you've heard my opinions, I'm interested in hearing from you. Leave a comment below if you think I missed anything or if you have any opinions to share. Otherwise, I'll talk to you next time. Take care and enjoy the ride.